Hi there everyone, this is Planning a Project, the Week 4 lecture for the subject Work Immersion for ICT Animation. In this video, we'll be talking about a short introduction of what planning a project is, what a work breakdown structure is and its parts, scheduling and how to do that using a Gantt chart, as well as what a risk is and conducting risk analysis. Let's start by giving a short introduction to planning a project. In the second stage of creating a project, one has to identify all of the work that has to be done. During the initiating a project stage, you were able to create a rough outline of the entire project through the use of a project charter. Now in this stage, it shall be further defined through our mentioned tools and techniques. Further, these are the main tasks that must be done when planning a project. First is to identify the project tasks and resource requirements. You will have to foresee everything that will be done when executing, monitoring, and closing a project. All of the tasks that must be done shall be planned in this stage. All of the resources needed for the creation of the project like scheduling, manpower, and cost shall be listed down in this stage as well. These shall help in controlling the resources based on project constraints like scope, quality, time, and cost. All of the mishaps and shortcomings shall be foreseen and certain measures shall be taken in place in case said mishaps happen. Another main task is to develop project documents that will be used to carry out the project. Upon execution and monitoring of the project, the tools and techniques and documents created in this stage shall guide those stages. It will also serve as an aid for decision making should some issues arise. The tools and techniques to be used in this stage are the following: the work breakdown structure, Gantt chart as the main scheduling tool, identifying risks, and risk analysis. And with that, let's begin with the work breakdown structure. The work breakdown structure, or WBS for short, is a presentation of the grouping of project elements according to deliverables. In a project, what really matters is the deliverables, or the main outputs of the project. Dividing the work according to those is one of the most logical ways of dividing work. However, in some cases, there are some important tasks that may not be directly related to the deliverables, so other structures can be used aside from the WBS. Anyway, the purposes of the WBS are as follows. First of all is that it defines and organizes the total scope of the project. In the initiating a project stage, you are able to define the project through its main scope and some constraints. In the WBS, you are able to list down what those scope entails down to its most specific elements. The WBS would also be able to properly organize those tasks according to the structure which will be given. The second purpose of the WBS is that it is a way to plan and display the tasks. This is mostly for the team members, as having a detailed set of tasks would help you decide on how to decide the team members responsible with the task, as you can see the relations and how the different tasks affect one another. The last purpose of the WBS is that it is a way to communicate project complexity. This is mostly for the stakeholders, customers, and company heads. This would show how much the tasks can also affect the constraints sent by the customer, and they are able to properly see and track the progress of the project through the WBS. The importance of the WBS are as follows. First is that it is the foundation for planning the project. This is basically a more detailed version of the project charter, which was then the foundation of initiating a project. This could clearly communicate what is needed to be done by simply referencing a visual organizer. Another importance is that the project planning is based on tasks. As stated, this would be an excellent way to determine how tasks will be assigned and distributed, as it's able to clearly show the tasks and the relationship between them. This would also be related to the fourth importance, defines human resources cost estimates. The fifth importance is that it provides a detailed illustration of the project. It is also an easier way to do so, as it is outlined and organized so that it's easier to visually digest. The last importance is that it is a key in understanding earned value management analysis tools. Earned value management is a part of monitoring a project which looks into the differences of the planned work from the actual work earned. When that shall be done later, the WBS will be the basis of comparison. Moreover, having a thoroughly planned WBS would also mean that the actual work may be similar to the planned work, which is ideal. In a WBS, there are 4 levels: the deliverables, work packages, project activities, and detailed tasks. Here we have a visual representation of the levels. With that, let's look into them. A deliverable is any unique and verifiable product, result, or capability to perform a service. This is basically what the team must produce and what the customer must approve and receive at the end of the project, so to say that it is complete. A work package is any collection of tasks needed to achieve the completion of the deliverable. In a system, these may be known as the features. In an animation, this may be known as the stages of pre-production, production, and post-production. A project activity is a component of work done during the project. In some cases, if the project is small, the WBS levels would end here. For more complex projects, we would have the detailed task, small processes or functions necessary to perform the project activity. To quantify it, a detailed task is around 4 to 40 hours for a full-blown implementation of a project. So that means that if a project activity can be done at most 40 hours, then it may not be necessary to have a detailed task under it. Moreover, if your detailed task requires more than 40 hours of work, then it is necessary that it must be divided, or it may be considered as another project activity. It is also not recommended to have more than 4 levels, as that is an overkill and that would mean that you would have too much of a scope. In your succeeding activities, it is recommended that a detailed task would take up to 1 to 4 hours of work. There are 2 views of the WBS, the chart view and the outline view. The chart view, as seen here, mimics an organizational chart. This is the more preferred version as it feels more organized and can be analyzed easier and can be used for discussions. The outline view can be used if there is not much time to create it to the previous one, or if you will be distributing it individually. Now let's move on to the second part, scheduling using a Gantt chart. Before looking into the different charts, let's first define what a project schedule is. It is a listing of the project's milestones, activities, and deliverables with an intended start and finish dates. These dates tend to be goals based on the project charter and the deadline that the customer has set. It also shows the dependency between tasks, determining the most logical set of steps to achieve said deliverables. It also looks into predecessor tasks, tasks after given tasks, and tasks across the timeline, or the amount of time until the given deadline. The importance of the project schedule are as follows. It shows the relationship of project activities and tasks. It serves as the roadmap for the project manager and stakeholders, and it serves as a communication and tracking tool for all members of the project. For a project schedule, the time is important. However, it is understood that adhering to such strict deadlines with a lot of working parts is a difficult task, so there is usually something which we call as start and finish dates. These would determine the duration of the task. There are 4 types of dates: early start, early finish, late start, and late finish. The early start is based on the earliest possible start date in line with its preceding tasks. The early finish is the earliest possible finish date based on early start and duration. The late start is the latest possible start date without delay, and the late finish is the preceding tasks, which are based from the work breakdown structure. It is possible for a project to be much earlier and much later than what is recommended, but having a later start and finish than the established late start and finish are not recommended. The following are the steps for the project schedule. First is to move the detailed tasks from the WBS to the schedule. If there are no detailed tasks, then the project activities would do. Afterwards, the task durations are added. These are based from previous experience as planned by the stakeholders, customer, company head, and some initial team members. Next, the tasks are arranged into sequential or simultaneous relationships. Again, this is based from the WBS and how the different tasks affect or complement each other. The nature of the task is also taken into consideration based if a person can do these tasks simultaneously should there be a limited number of team members. Based from the accumulated duration of all tasks, the initial start or finish date for the overall project is established. Afterwards, the early and late start and finish times per task is added. The early and finish are calibrated based from the duration, and then adjustments are done based from negotiations with other stakeholders. Lastly, information such as team members' names and tasks and costs are to be added. There are different ways of how a project diagram can be illustrated, one of which is the Gantt chart, which is the most common and one of the easiest ways to do so. Another one is a network diagram, which comprises of arrows and circles indicating the task and duration. It kind of looks like a flowchart almost. We also have the Program Evaluation Review Technique or PERT chart, which is the predecessor to the network diagrams. The last example is the critical path method, which is similar to the network diagram but is more detailed with early and late start and finish times with the duration. Before we look into how the Gantt chart works, we need to look into the concepts of project diagrams. First is the milestones, which are the tasks that show project's major events. Achieving said milestones does not mean that the work is finished, but it does mean that there's a significant amount of work done. Next is the baseline, which is the approved project plan with the approved scope changes. This is usually the project charter or the approved work breakdown structure. As such, a modifier in terms of cost, schedule, or performance measurement baseline is added to help determine what is deemed successful from not successful. With that, let's move to the Gantt chart. This is a project diagram wherein a bar chart is placed along a timeline. This would show the duration of a project activity or detailed task based on the work breakdown structure. As stated, this is considered as one of the most common and easiest ways to determine project scheduling. To create a Gantt chart, let's look into these general steps. First, we have to list down all deliverables, work packages, project activities, and detailed tasks, if possible, from the WBS into the y-axis. Then plot the duration either through dates or times into the x-axis. Based from the schedule, draw a bar graph from the start and end date of the activity. Take note of activities that are related to each other and how their durations would affect one another. Lastly, add the assigned persons to the activity. It is also possible for one to assign the activity first and then add the durations to maximize team productivity while having lesser team members. With that, we have an example on this slide. A separate video has been created for a more detailed look on how to create a Gantt chart based from the format given. The last part of this lesson is on risk analysis. To start off, let's define what a risk is. This is any uncertain event or condition which, if it occurs, has a positive or negative effect on the project's objectives. Positive risks must be enhanced to maximize its benefits, while negative risks must be focused and mitigated on. As such, in this lesson, we'll mostly be focusing on negative risks. To specify this, these are situations or events that will negatively impact the success of the project. And when you're planning a project, it's best to know these upfront and immediately know what to do with them. There are different types of risks, depending on the nature and complexity of the project. One is scope, particularly scope creep, which is the addition of requirements during project execution. For example, a competitor of your customer has released something with interesting features. More or less, your customer will also want to add those. Other examples are integration issues, so some of the features have conflict in terms of implementation and change in dependencies. Another type of risk is scheduling, which includes unexpected delays by an external vendor or other external members of the team, natural factors like disasters, and delay in acquisition of parts and equipment necessary. Another type of risk is resource, focusing on the other constraints like time and cost. This may include difficult team members, outsourcing team, attrition of team members, lack of skills, and unavailability of funds. Technology is an example of a resource, but considering a lot of projects rely on this resource, it deserves its own category. This includes delays from software and hardware defects, and failure of an underlying system or platform. There are other types of risk, such as governance, mostly coming from outside of the team, strategic in terms of detailed implementation in accordance to the company or customer's wishes, operations such as contracts, market standards and operations, legal disputes such as intellectual property, and other external hazards like location and specified natural disasters. A risk does not occur unless there is a trigger. As such, here we have guide questions to determine such. One is, can I see it coming before it hits the project? Are there any signs to look out for to determine that this risk is about to occur? The other is, will I know when the risk has hit the project and is affecting it? There are some risks that are subtle, and you will only know until it has significantly affected your project. One of the best examples is scope creep, as the name implies. Once a risk has been determined and listed, you must now know how to prepare for it. One of which is something we call a risk analysis. This is a set of techniques and tools to analyze the effect of the identified risks on the project. It also provides risk information to support decision-making on reducing project uncertainty should the risk happen. It can also provide risk information to support decision-making on mitigating the problem. To do risk analysis, there are some certain steps that must be undertaken. First is to analyze the risk by determining the risk priority. This will determine which risks will affect your project and which is necessary for mitigation and prevention techniques. In a project, there are a lot of risks, but that doesn't mean that all of those risks need to be addressed. For example, the positive risks that were stated earlier. There are also low-level risks that may not even happen or not affect the project significantly. To determine risk priority, there are two elements: impact and probability. Impact answers two questions. How bad is it when it arises? And what bad can it do to the project? Basically, this would determine the effect of the risk to the project. Probability answers two questions. What is the likelihood of it occurring during the project? And what's the likelihood of something will fail? Basically, this would determine the possibility of the risk happening. These risks may have a numerical or descriptive value. But for this lesson, we'll be having two descriptions only, high and low. Based from the two elements, the risk priority is determined. Low-level risk means that a risk is not of utmost importance and there is little to no need of creating mitigation problems. The most that you would do is to monitor to see if a bigger problem arises. Medium-level risk means that the risk is somewhat noticeable and there is a need to mitigate the problem. Its occurrence would depend on either the impact or probability. High-level risk means that the risk is of utmost importance because it is almost certain that it will occur and it will significantly affect the success of the project. Mitigation plans must be in place in the moment the problem will arise. Here we have the risk priority levels based on impact and probability. Low-level risks would have a low impact and low probability. Medium-level risk would have one low and one high, either from impact or probability. High-level risk have high impact and high probability. To see this in action, we have a separate video for an example. That ends the lesson for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please comment under this video or consult us through our social media on Facebook and through the created network of group chats. Don't forget to wash your hands.